Carly. And so Heather and I are together here at our workspace, and we're trying something with using our computers in different ways, and also getting used to this new, I know it's probably not new for everyone, but for us, it still feels a little bit like a new version of Zoom. So we're kind of getting our feet under us a little bit with trying to present and manage everything. We wanted to be together so that we could, be in the same space with you all this afternoon. So thank you for being here. We are so excited to have been asked to talk about ACES. We are asking all of you who are here, if you wouldn't mind, to share in the chat your name, your program. Please feel free to also include your pronouns and years of experience teaching adults, as well as your current role in adult education. So great. Elaine's modeling this for us. She works for Hopkins. She works with ESL students, and she's a new teacher. Wonderful, Elaine. This webinar is a perfect place for you to be, I think, as a new teacher, new to Minneapolis adult ed. And we've got Marsha from Elgin, who's got some great historical perspective about adult ed, having worked in the field longer than Heather and I. I don't meet a lot of people who have been in the field longer than we have. So great. Welcome, Marsha. Welcome to my friend Christy Cannon. It's great that you're here today, who works as a program assistant at Metro North. We have Mandeep from Plymouth. What's ACF? I don't know what that is.
Anoka Correctional Facility, perhaps.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay, great. So we're seeing kind of a mix of people. Some people very, very new, some people more experienced. And we want to welcome you all. So again, my name is Stephanie Sommers. I am with my colleague, Heather Turngren. We both work for Minneapolis Adult Education. We've both been in the field of adult ed for about 25 years. We both were involved in ACES from the beginning. We were some of the teachers who worked when the original TIF, the Transition Integrations Framework, was created, and coming up with those categories and skills and sub-skills. We were both, yes, the mothers of ACES. We were both involved in doing some of the training back in the beginning when this was rolled out across the state. And we also jointly helped to update the TIF for its TIF 2.0 iteration that we we're so happy to present to the field last year, which was the 10th anniversary of ACES TIF getting started. And so we were, again, so glad to be asked to come and talk about this topic with you today. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I am here. I'm navigating systems, and I'm using a lot of digital technology today. So thank you all for joining us, and please feel free to use the chat or maybe raise the hand feature if you have questions along our journey today. Welcome, everyone.
All right, so a few things that we will be working on today. So we are going to, I want to begin, I guess I will frame this webinar by talking about sort of the idea behind the webinar was that we wanted to sort of create a series of companion webinars to support and inspire and encourage people who have been taking the ACES and TIF Foundations course in Canvas. So this course has been live in Canvas for maybe about a year now. Before that, it was hosted on Schoology. And so we wanted to, we'll spend some of our time today looking at sort of the navigation in Canvas. We'll give you some insights into things that might help you to get through the course more quickly, understand the course more deeply. We want to create a sense of community so that maybe you can find other people who are also doing this work and make some new connections. And then the two categories we're going to focus on specifically today are effective communication and learning strategies. You can see that we'll be doing 2 more webinars. On November 26th, we'll be talking about critical thinking and self-management. And then in December, we'll be talking about developing a future pathway and navigating systems. And we really would love your feedback. If you like the way things go today, the next 2 webinars will probably follow a fairly similar framework. If you would like us to be talking about some different things related to ACES and TIF and transition skills, please don't be shy about sharing that with us, because we certainly want these webinars to be useful for the field. And I think the best way to do that is by getting input from you.
And you can do that now during today's webinar by entering information in the chat, but also some of us think about these things after watching a webinar. And so in order to get CEUs, you can fill out the evaluation. And in that point, you could be asking for other things. Carly's going to be sharing in the chat a link to the complete TIF. It's available on the Atlas website. It can be overwhelming if you've never seen it before. So we're going to walk you through different aspects of the TIF, the complete TIF, looking at effective communication and the learning strategies categories. So please think about that, and thank you, Carly, for sharing it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so why don't you?
Yeah, we've got an icebreaker here. It's one of my favorites because I am the complete FOMO person, fear of missing out. I want to be everywhere, do everything all the time, and I can't. There's only so much time in a day. So think about this. If you had an extra hour in each day, a 25th hour, what would you do at that time? And this is a way for us to think about some of the categories. What would we do at that time? Patsy, read. Yes, read for pleasure, right? Not read for work.
Wow.
Elaine would work out. I would like to read and work out. That's my FOMO. I guess I want to do it all. Carly, I could have guessed that. Playing pickleball. Okay, that's wonderful. And winning, right, Carly? People would walk and paint, work out. Hey, Dawn is here. Welcome, Dawn. Sleep. Elizabeth, that's kind of what I would like to do depending on the time of year, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Stephanie? What do you think?
Well, I wish I could be one of the workout people, but I don't think workout, that's not me. But I do love to walk and be outdoors. So if I had an extra time in every day, I definitely think I would spend it outside, walking, or maybe even sitting on my porch and reading, something like that. Yeah.
And when you're thinking about this extra time for yourself, I also think about our learners who might not have that extra time built into their schedules to allow them to do things like work out or read, because they're probably doing family work, working, and then either learning English or in many cases working on a high school equivalency. So using the TIF will give students perhaps that extra hour in their lives to be more focused on what their needs are.
That's a great point. These are important professional skills that can help us to reclaim some extra time through being more organized or using learning strategies to learn more effectively, things like that. Great. All right. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. And now we actually have another opportunity for some participation here. We are wondering about who is enrolled in this course. So we're asking, what's your ACES basis? Are you currently enrolled in the ACES Foundations course? If yes, please put a number 1. If you are enrolled, how far along are you in the course? Like, have you opened it? Maybe you've done one of the modules, and that's totally fine.
And I'd like to say there's no judgment.
Absolutely
You could
no
just
judgment.
have enrolled recently.
Yes. And then have you participated in other ACES TIF professional development in the past 4 years? So since 2020. So we're kind of looking beginning around the time of the pandemic. All right, so we've got some people we got a couple of ones. They've opened it, but they not sure if they started it. Lori's saying no, she's not in there. Elizabeth is saying she's not enrolled in the course, which is okay. She has participated in some PD. I do believe Elizabeth might have joined me in at least one webinar in the past 4 years, talking about ACES and the overlap with digital literacy. Yes.
And I think in the one room schoolhouse.
Yes. Okay, Keith says he has enrolled and maybe he's finished 2 modules. Fantastic. And Christy says she just enrolled. She's in an ABE graduate class where we study ACES TIF. Fantastic. So Christy brings up, stirs in my mind, for some of you who are new to Minnesota ABE, maybe you are not aware that in Minnesota ABE, we have 3 sets of content standards. We have the CCRS, or College and Career Readiness Standards, and those are our academic standards. We have North Star Digital Literacy. Those are our digital literacy standards. And then we have ACES TIF, and those provide the foundation for our professional or success skills for our students. So we often look at students need the skills in ACES TIF to help them be successful with those other 2 sets of standards.
And I would say in life in general.
Yes. Mandeep said he just finished a course. Great. Congratulations, Mandeep. All right. So we are going to spend the next few minutes talking. This is just a reminder. You don't have to do this right now, but during the webinar, please do tell us what ACES TIF topics you are hoping to learn more about. So that could be today or what you'd like to see. Oh, excuse me. Thank you. Yes, please excuse me. Mandeep, I'm sorry. The ACES TIF topics I want to learn more about today or in one of the upcoming sessions. You can feel free to put that in the chat, or if anyone would like to unmute, you can unmute and raise your hand, and we would love to hear from you. Okay, so we'll look for hands, we'll look for information in the chat. And what we're going to move into now is just kind of what we hope is not a too terribly cumbersome overview of the course, what the different modules kind of look like, and then we'll talk a little bit about the final assignment.
And for Mandeep, if you have feedback for us about this, and that would be great because you completed the whole course. Congrats to you. Here we go. The ACES Foundations course is online in Canvas. Carly is going to be sharing the link if you have not enrolled in the course. You can also check through the link, perhaps, if you want to remember your password. I had to do that, friends. That was my learning strategy. I did not keep that password in my password access key. I did now. But then you can see the courses here. You can earn up to 60 EUs with the successful completion of the course.
Yes. So, for example, if you have to renew your license this year, as I do, 60 EUs might be appealing for you. Additionally, this PD, the ACES online course, I do believe is one of the recommended courses that new teachers complete when they're hired in Minnesota, just so that they can become familiar with the language and become familiar with this set of content standards, which you will hear people referring to when you talk to other programs or teachers or attend the regional events or Summer Institute and things like that. Yes. And it's true. So when we, as Elizabeth pointed out, when we think about implementing standards, we often focus on CCRS because that is maybe what we want our students to be learning. And especially if we're classroom teachers like Heather and I are, we're both social studies teachers, we want our students developing those core reading skills and being able to understand inferences and graphic information and things like that. But to go along with that, students do need these ACES skills, which help them to be more independent learners, help them learn how to answer their own questions, help them advocate for themselves if they run into roadblocks. And so I totally agree with you. Sometimes we tend to focus on the pure academic work. And for me, if I see my students struggling, it's a time for me to pause and remember maybe we need to look at more of those success skills for a minute.
I would agree. And I think back to the name of the TIF, the Transitions Integration Framework. It's a way for students to transition those skills, those numeracy and literacy skills, into other aspects of their life. So thank you for that.
All right.
So the course also, I saw, I think Jill Rivard here, some managers, you might need to be keeping track of what your staff is participating in for maybe a 5-year narrative and such. So it's a good way you can connect with staff to see who has completed any sort of ACES training. So this is, again, the ACES Foundation course. It's listed online at Atlas. Carly shared the link. Thank you, Carly. Carly is, in fact, the overseer of the course, so to speak. She might be the dean of the ACES Foundation's online course. And she's going to be the one that you would reach out to if you have any issues. And she'll also be the one to share information with you as the completer of the course. She's the ace of ACES.
Yep.
Exactly. And we just want to remind you that you should be signing up as a student, not as a teacher. This is because for this online course, you are the student. We know we're teachers.
And you can just self-enroll. And it's also an opportunity for you to experience a new online learning platform. If you've not been in Canva before, it is something that, excuse me, not Canva, Canvas. That might also be interesting from a purely, kind of checking out a new platform point of view. All right, so when you enroll, you'll be asked some questions, asked to enter your email and answer a few questions, and of course, prove you are not a robot.
Yeah, and I think about our learners having to go through enrolling in a course, perhaps. So teaching some of those digital literacy skills. I'm not a robot. What's CAPTCHA? I thought about that when I was enrolling into this course. I am showing you screenshots as I enrolled in the course, and I selected that I am a new user, and it is called the ACES TIF Foundation FY for fiscal year 25.
Mm-hmm. All right, so then after you enroll, you'll get a confirmation message saying you are enrolled, and then you can go to the course. So inside of Canvas, for me, I refer to the left side navigation as my main navigation for the course. It's where I can get back to the modules, which is where really the meat of the course is located. Okay, so once you get into the course, you will encounter numerous times this graphic, which shows us the TIF logo in the middle, the ACES TIF logo in the center, those two arrows, and then we have some logos that were created to represent each of the 6 categories of the TIF. And so those are critical thinking, developing a future pathway, effective communication, learning strategies, navigating systems, and self-management. So you'll see this and you'll know you are in the right place.
You get a nice welcome about the framework and how it is used within Minnesota adult education.
And then this navigation tip, again, you'll see there's different ways to get to the modules. So learning modules is where you will spend most of your time in the course. And you can get there from this quick access button, or you can get there always from the left side navigation where it says modules. Okay.
And Steph, I have been using the quick access, and for me, that's always been the quickest.
Mm-hmm. All right. So one question I have received in the past as someone who has had experience being the course overlord in previous versions of the course is people sometimes ask about how do I get my CEUs? What do I have to complete? And so to complete this course and get your CEUs, you must do 2 general modules that give you background information. You select 3 category-specific modules, and then you submit a final assignment. And so the final assignment is the piece when that is submitted that triggers for Carly that you are ready to receive your CEUs.
And all of this is explained directly inside Canvas, inside the course.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll look at a little bit more here. Again, there are 2 general modules, one that just is an introduction to the idea of Minnesota Content Standards. The other one is an introduction to the TIF, which is the document, the Transitions Integration Framework. All course users complete those 2 modules. And then you can choose 3 of the 6 category modules to complete, and those are that's your time investment in the course, the 2 generals and the 3 category specific. Sometimes people think they have to complete all 6 of these. That is not the case. You want to choose 3, and a good idea is to choose 3 that you think would be most useful for you in your work with your students.
Exactly, Stephanie. And we chose to go in the order that you see listed here. So today we'll be focusing on effective communication and learning strategies, and then critical thinking, self-management for the next webinar. However, you get to choose whichever you want, and these are all estimate of the time frame. If you're walking away from your computer, it might take a little bit longer than what that estimate is.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so another thing that we have added to the course over time to try to help people is this checklist. So there is a downloadable checklist that Carly just chatted out a link to. This is something that you could print out or save on your computer to help you remember what you have completed and to help you keep track of your work. Courses in Canvas, the ones I have seen, they do not save your place. So if you do, say, one module or a portion of a module, and then you get pulled away or you need a break, it will not direct you to where you were when you left. So you need to keep track of that. This checklist can help. I know that often people work on courses like this sort of, when they have time, they fit it in here or there. So having the checklist would be a way to remind yourself where you left off, what you were last working on.
And that checklist is such a great learning strategy. I use it within my classroom to have students check off when they've completed different tasks or assignments. And I think you do the same for the adult diploma students.
Absolutely.
In the program. So it is a learning strategy.
Absolutely. So you need to complete those modules, complete the final assignment, and then you will be asked to complete a course evaluation. And completing that course evaluation, it's a Google form that is required for getting your CEUs. Okay.
And you can see there's course learning objectives, as every course would have, learning targets. And then the layout of each of the 6 categories is very much the same, where there's module overview and introduction to the skills, the ACES process that we'll talk about today, and then these different TIF methods.
Yes, so we are going to talk about, for our 2 target categories, we're going to be talking about the skills, the ACES process, and the methods, as Heather mentioned. I also wanted to point out that the modules are numbered. So effective communication, for example, is module 3, and each individual task, so to speak, within the module, whether that's a quiz or a discussion or a page where you're reading background information or watching a video, they are numbered. And so that's another way to help you keep track of where you are in the course. So maybe I completed 3.1 through 3.5 today. I could jot that down on my checklist, and then I know where I need to pick up the next time I get into the course.
Wonderful.
All right. And we just have like a couple more notes about the
icons.
And
Yes.
the way the course was designed. So we really were trying to make this easier for people to navigate. And so we came up with a few consistent icons to use to help you know what kind of activity. So again, a page in Canvas is going to be sort of just that, looks like a document or a page icon. That is where there's going to be information for you to read or a video for you to watch. And so there's not really anything interactive there. You might be asked to stop and reflect, but it's really just you getting information. Okay. Then the next type of icon and activity is that rocket or spaceship. That's the quiz icon. So you do need to complete the quizzes in order to complete a module. Okay. And then there are discussions, and those use the speech bubble icon. And we do ask for you to contribute to those as well as you're working your way through the course. So again, these are consistent throughout all of the modules to help you know what you're doing at every point, what the expectations are, and how you should be interacting with the content.
And there is a final assignment. So the final assignment has you reflect upon a student's transition with the transitions map. We want you to think about a student and their goals and what skills you'll be focusing on to move students along their successful journey into reaching their own goals.
The transitions map assignment has been the same since the very first iteration of the course. So it is a document. It's available both as a PDF if you want to just print it and write on it, or as a editable Word document. You can do either one. If you print it out as a PDF, you obviously will have to scan it and re-upload it when you are completing the course. And again, you're thinking of a single student, thinking of that student's goal, and then choosing categories, skills, and sub-skills that you feel will help the student reach their goal, as well as identifying one routine that you could work on with the student to help them reach their goal. Okay.
So many transition skills just for you to complete the course. But we're also modeling so that you can be helping your learners complete your course.
All right. So that's our final slide about the course. Thank you, especially if you are not taking the course. Thank you for sticking with us through that background information. We are very happy to answer any questions. If you are in the course and something has felt confusing to you, please do let us know. Again, hopefully knowing about some of these tools like the checklist, understanding the organization will help you to feel more confident as you continue working through the course in the future.
Yeah, and we're going to just take a closer look at the effective communication category. You can see we've got that icon from the full TIF. If you want to follow along on the link that Carly shared a while ago on the full TIF, you can follow along on pages 9 through 14. This would be similar to the module overview and then some of the skills.
Yes. And when we open the TIF, it's going to be when we're looking at the lesson examples in just a moment. Okay, so effective communication, you can see here the definition of this category from the TIF, okay? So I won't read that for you, the whole thing, but it is a two-way process. We have to remember that we are both teaching speaking skills and listening skills, being active listeners, engaging people respectfully, being able to disagree respectfully. My goodness, what a time in America to be teaching these skills and using these skills ourselves, I think. So you can see here, you make an excellent point, but I must respectfully disagree.
And yes, but also I want to point out that that communication can be written as well.
Yes.
So it's not just speaking and listening, but written as well. I'm going to highlight some of the images that we have here. We have been using our own digital literacy learning skills, and this was an image that was created in Canva.
Yes.
So Stephanie created an AI-generated image, which is another way that we can be showing our learners in the classroom how we can be using our digital literacy skills right there.
And creating images for our own assignments or slides or presentations that include representations of our students, right?
Yeah.
So I work with many, many Somali women. So I wanted images of covered women to represent that culture, and Canva was able to create those for me.
And what effective communication? You've people want to listen because
Yes.
they're included.
All right, so these are the 3 skills from the effective communication category. We have skill 1, engage positively and actively with individuals in both one-on-one and team settings to accomplish goals. Skill 2, use language, style, level of formality, and nonverbal cues appropriate to context and task in oral and, as Heather pointed out, written communication. I know I talk about this one quite a bit with my adult diploma students when they're writing their essays, for example, and they need to maintain a formal tone. Okay. And then skill 3 is utilize a variety of technologies for communication, right? So text, maybe using email, using the phone. What other?
Well, I think of voicemail, and I think of ways that some students might. I've seen commercials for it. I don't have it yet, but the newer Apple phones where you could have that more formal tone. So it's a way to maybe teach them with those tools to create maybe an email or a voicemail with more formal content.
Great.
And these are just some sample activities we thought of that a companion with those skills. So students could work in a small group or in breakout rooms if you have an online class to answer some questions after reading a text, and students must discuss their answers and come to a group consensus, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. So you modeling ways and strategies for students to come up with that consensus language. You could also have students look at several short writing samples and edit them to give them a more formal tone. I really love that example, and it works so well for those at the higher level thinking about their next steps to move on to higher education. And also students can learn about their digital footprints and digital privacy and discuss various scenarios related to appropriate and responsible use of social media. Important for their lives, and also if they have children, for their family lives.
Great. So these were just some example activities we thought of that aligned with those 3 skills from this area. And now we're going to direct you to the sample activities that are inside the complete TIF document. So some of you, because I know some of you are familiar with ACES TIF, and if you're like me, you mostly refer to the TIF at a glance document. That is a much smaller, I think it's only like 9 pages. That is a smaller document that has the skills, or I should say the categories, skills, and sub-skills, but it does not include any of these sample activities. And so because they are mentioned in the course, we thought it was a good time to remind people that these sample activities are available in the complete TIF. So if you are a newer teacher or just a teacher maybe looking for a little inspiration or new ideas, these activities are a great place to go. The way that you read these is the activities become more difficult in complexity moving from left to right. So in the leftmost column, these activities would be for your more beginning level learners.
Both ELL as well as HSC. So there's no distinction between ESL or ESOL and native English speaking students. You just have to know your student population and who is in your class.
That's a good point. These are, sometimes I think people feel like these are mostly ESL skills, and they definitely are not. These are skills all of our learners need. In the middle, we have more intermediate level, and then to the right, we have the more advanced level activity ideas. So there's the activity, then underneath that, there are some examples specific to if you're trying to incorporate technology. I will say this was created before COVID, so these are not necessarily online class examples. I would say most of these were probably created with the idea of you being in class with your students and wanting to bring in some technology. However, I'm sure that we could come up with ways to adapt and use these in an online class. And then at the bottom, you can see that the ACES TIF was created with the idea that our learners need to be able to demonstrate and use these skills within 3 important life contexts: being active in their community, being successful at school, and reaching their goals at work. And so the examples will reflect these 3 contexts.
So we've tried to capture all of the various and diverse learners that we encounter in adult education.
All right. So now we are going to ask you to do a little work. We are going to ask you to look at your complete TIF. And again, that was shared in the chat. And we are going to ask you to look on pages 10 to 14. And this is an activity from the course. So if you are taking the course, pay attention, because you could possibly reuse and recycle some of the ideas we're about to share into the course discussion. Okay. And so we're asking you to choose an activity that you see on pages 10 to 14, thinking about an activity that would work with your learners or a group of learners you've worked with in the past. And you're going to answer 3 questions. Which effective communication skill and sub-skill do you think the activity addresses? You're going to briefly describe the activity that you chose, and then how might you use the activity with your students? So, and then we usually add something here. We're asking you, when you think about using it with your students, what tweaks might you have to make? So it might be, this looks like a great activity, but I teach slightly higher level students, so I would change it by doing this, for example. So we're going to, Heather and I are going to take a break from talking for just a moment and give you time to think and look in the TIF. Okay.
So again, you'll go to pages 10 through 14 of the complete TIF. Carly had shared that link earlier. Oh, and you did it again. Thank you, Carly. And then think about an activity.
So one of the activities that you see listed on those pages, something that you think you might consider trying out with your students, how would you use it and what tweaks would you need to make?
You could type it in the chat, or you could use that raise the hand feature, unmute and share with us. Sometimes I know myself, I'm more of a verbal processor in this sort of online environment. I might not have enough to type in to the chat. And if anyone is taking the course now, maybe you've already done this work in your assignment and you can share what you determined.
Wait time is hard for me, but we're going to
It
do
is
it. We're
on
going to
an
do it.
online class, 10 to 20 seconds. Sometimes there's a delay.
All right, so Patsy says she's thinking of low-level ESL students and how she might tweak for them. She might do more show and tell for the activity on page 13, using a variety of tech for communication. Great. Wonderful. And we'd love, love, love to hear from a few more people. We know some of you do probably incorporate ACES, TIF into your classes on a regular basis. Some of you might be new and looking for ideas. So now is a chance when we can support our newer teachers by giving them some ideas. Carly says there's a role play activity that would be fun for people to practice effective communication in various situations, from informal to formal, using slang versus professional words.
Carly, that makes me think about what we ask students at our higher level social studies to paraphrase. So it's practicing that skill of paraphrasing, which is both effective communication as well as the academic skills.
Yeah, so I am going to mention a website that I often share out, and it is called Skills to Pay the Bills. And this is a website from the US Department of Labor. It was created specifically to help train younger adults, maybe who needed more support with professional skills. And there is a really great video in there about communication where you see someone she's working like in a cafeteria as a cashier. And as everyone comes through her line, she's using sort of like chat talk. Like she'll, instead of saying thank you when someone is up to her register, she'll just say TY to them. And this goes on and nobody knows what she's talking about. And her boss finally has to talk to her about maybe that's not how we communicate at work, right? So it's a fun one to watch, and I've shown it to students and they always laugh if you'd like to check that out. And Marcia says, oh, we're getting a lot now. And let's see here. Marcia says, I love the website Scavenger Hunt as a jigsaw activity. I have done this with high beginning students looking at community services in the area. I had to provide a highly scaffolded handout to help students look for specific information. Yeah, so creating like a handout, maybe like where students fill in information, like guided note styles, is a great idea for making an activity like that more accessible for all levels of learners.
That's great. I love any sort of scavenger hunt, especially online, that's bringing in those digital literacy skills. And every website is just a little bit different. We do that often within career pathway classes, looking at different websites on where they have to go to apply for a job. Oh, Krista is talking about the future curriculum by Pearson has digital literacy curriculum. There are fun matching flashcards with words and names, a memory game. Yeah. And then like, what is it? What is the name of this? And just all of those skills that students would have to use when they're outside of the classroom.
Yeah. And it sounds like Keith is also someone who likes to find some of those videos. So an online video that depicts dealing with an angry customer, which I'm sure we could find like on YouTube. Someone's upset about a bill. And that would be skill 2, sub-skill A, maybe showing it to students and having them discuss things like, how could each person have been more respectful? Or, do you think this interaction resulted in both parties being satisfied? How could it be different? Those kinds of things. And Elizabeth says, I was looking at that same activity on page 13 involving putting communication technology since 2000 on a timeline. For intermediate ESL, I might provide the information instead of asking learners to find it themselves. Learners could still sequence the inventions on a timeline and discuss appropriate tools for different contexts. Yeah, maybe you even have like strips of paper and the students could physically manipulate the little cut up pieces of paper on the timeline. That would be great. Let's see. Dawn says students will be able to recognize meaning in situations important in a healthcare setting. Using this with students interested in the healthcare field or higher level ESL or ABE. Yeah, so to kind of contextualize this, Dawn, for a healthcare class. So you could, for example, have an interaction where a student wasn't clear on the directions being given to them by the nurse or doctor. Maybe asking questions about billing or insurance, having students watch a video or think of role playing an interaction between a patient and a pharmacist. Those kinds of things would be great for context, like an ESL class that was more focused on a specific career field. Okay, we've got digital literacy. And then Karen says, we have students that have had strokes and have limited speaking, typing, writing ability. We use a lot of clarifying questions. Sometimes communication gets frustrating. We acknowledge when this happens, take a breath together and restart, taking it bit by bit. Writing down notes that they can point to when they are referring to that part. When finished, we go over everything again, part by part, to make sure we understand what they are trying to communicate.
Wonderful strategies, Karen, and thank you for sharing them in the chat. That's really great. I love how you all are thinking about your learners and their needs.
Yes, great ideas. And I will say another one that kind of a tool like this for people who might need help remembering was to teach students how to use like a voice memo or make a short video when they're talking to a doctor, for example. And then when they go home, they could share that with others in their support community so that they are able to together review what the instructions were and get more complete information that way.
I think I need that too. Okay. Sometimes those hospital visits are so quick that you just want to have someone always by your side.
All right. So thank you so much. This is an example of what it looks like to dig into the skills and look at the sample activities. And you will find opportunities to do that throughout all the modules in the course. Next, we're going to examine the ACES process, and we are going to watch a short video, and then we will debrief a little bit.
Yeah, and the video is also within the course, and you can see this screenshot of the information around the ACES process. Carly's going to be showing the video. She's going to make it work. Thank you, Carly.
The ACES process allows you to effectively integrate transition skills into your instruction. It has 4 steps. A, assess instruction, materials, or curriculum to identify where TIF skills are already addressed. C, complement those materials to intentionally integrate TIF skills. E, evaluate the outcomes after delivering the lesson or using the materials. S, study and reflect on the lesson. What else do the students need? What else do I need? For our effective communication exploration today, we are going to spend time on the assess step and the complement step. These will take the bulk of our time. We will also quickly look at the evaluate step and the study and reflect steps of the ACES process.
So let's say you have to read an incredibly long email from your boss that you have to finish before the big meeting starts in 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you, Carly. It was sharing for us. And then we'll come back to us sharing our screen. So I'm just going to kind of talk into this transition time. And I am going to, again, repeat that ACES is an acronym that stands for Academic, Career, and Employability Skills. But we've also used it as an acronym to help us remember a process we can go through whenever we are examining a lesson or an activity to see what skills it might already include and what skills we might want to add. So the A is assess, okay? And then the C is complement, and then it is evaluate and study, right? So we're going to try to do this pretty quickly. And it's okay if you can't read everything on my screen, because this is really just an example of an activity from a listening and speaking class that we have here in Minneapolis. Students get together in small groups to answer some discussion questions. There's a process where they all take turns choosing a question and then sharing their answers. These particular questions have to do with voting because we have a civics unit in our listening and speaking curriculum. But we're going to start with what is one effective communication skill or sub-skill that having students take turns answering these types of discussion questions? Would not need to be specific to voting. That's just an example. What is a skill and sub-skill that students would work on developing by doing this kind of an activity? If we could get 1 or 2 people to put their ideas in the chat, that would be great. A skill and a sub-skill.
And this would come from the full TIF, if you go back to that effective communications page. While you're looking at that, I just want to point out in the video you heard Leah Conklin Olson's voice. She was also a lead in ACES and walking us through the ACES process.
Mm-hmm. So what do we think? What is one effective communication skill and sub-skill that we might practice? Okay, Keith says skill 1, engage with other individuals. Absolutely, right? So we are talking to other people, we are engaging with them. So then what we're going to do is we're going to think about the C, the complement, okay? And so again, giving students a list of discussion questions. The questions could be on any topic, really. The topic is not important here. It's the task that we're really thinking about. So what is a way we might be able to complement this task that would allow students to practice maybe another effective communication skill or even another ACES TIF skill? We're looking for 1 or 2 ideas in the chat, something else that students could do while or in addition to, it could be before or after they discuss these discussion questions, so that they are getting a little bit more out of this activity. That's the complement, and that's what we're going to practice with right now.
And Stephanie, as you say that, my brain thinks about back when I taught some different ESL classes, how I would have students, they would have to ask that same question to 5 individuals. So it's getting used to asking the same question, maybe asking them to repeat their answer, to write it down directly. So also asking for those clarifying questions. Oh, great. Elizabeth writes in the chat, provide sentence frames for adding on to others' ideas. Wonderful. Yeah. Respectfully disagreeing and asking clarifying questions. So what I'm hearing you say is blank. Exactly. You might need to provide those sentence frames. And after a while, you can slowly remove them so students are using that language naturally without even you being around. That's that idea of transitioning. Wonderful, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. And we'd love to get maybe another example of a complement in the chat. And just to bring it back to the course, this is an example of the type of activity that we usually do with our ACES training. In the course, you watch a video and you watch a teacher teaching an ACES style lesson, and you think about the ACES process while you're watching that video, and what are other things that teacher might have done to enhance that lesson. And so we've got another idea here. Carly says, create a slide or oral presentation. Yes. So maybe students could choose one question, and instead of just answering it, with a quick answer, they actually add some visuals. Yeah. So they're getting some digital literacy in there, and also practicing some other skills. That's great, using technology effectively.
That's so wonderful, because I think when you go into the course, you will see that some of the videos are a little bit dated. It doesn't mean that they're not good, but you will really see ways that you could be effectively complementing those videos. And as you say that, Carly, it makes me think maybe make an AI generated image. Mm-hmm. You can always bring in those digital literacy skills. Thank you for that, friends.
All right. So we're going to move into the third sort of component that we include in the course that's part of our ACES training, which is TIF methods. So TIF methods, these are ways to bring in ACES TIF skills into any type of lesson, in any type of context. And we do it through these methods. So it's using language, creating routines and norms, learning task formats, and technology. And when we do this, what we are trying to do is make our classroom environment a mirror of our students' target environment. And so an example of that, one that has stuck with me for years, somebody said that they teach a healthcare class. And so having students maybe use hand sanitizer or disinfectant foam when they come into the classroom, making that a norm or routine, because that might be what students have to do when they enter patients' rooms in a healthcare setting, right? And so we're introducing them to that type of a norm and making it part of our classroom environment so that they can carry that with them into their target environment.
That's a great example. I think about, I teach online, and our norm in the classroom that has turned into a routine is that people announce themselves when they join the class. So they'll say hello, and then everyone knows that someone new has joined in the class. It's what we would do if we enter in a room. We'd greet people. Mm-hmm. In an online environment, that's our effective communication. That was a norm that turned into a routine.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so again, routines are activities that we repeat in the same way. There are processes that we can teach our students. They help with classroom management, They help students to better understand what's expected of them when they come into class and start a lesson. A norm is similar to a routine. It's expected behaviors, like Heather said. Another norm in my online class is we mute ourselves when we enter class so that we can't all hear the background noise. People know that they do that. The idea of a norm is that it becomes internalized behavior that students do without being reminded and do in different environments.
And I would say then take it to another location.
Mhm.
When students move from your class to another class, they know to mute right away.
Mhm.
That's the joy of having that norm.
A learning task format is the way we create an assignment. So maybe you use a lot of graphic organizers and you use the same graphic organizer every time your students complete a type of reading. Or maybe you always have your students do spelling tests in the same way. Or you always record your new vocabulary words using the same type of format. So the format remains consistent, the content changes, students get used to the format of the task. That becomes something that they understand and are comfortable with. And over time, we can add more rigor or change the content, and students can still engage in a successful way with the task. Okay, language is about using academic language or vocabulary that we want our students to be able to use in their target environments. And technology, of course, what kind of technology are students going to be using? If your students plan to go on to higher ed, for example, maybe they need to know how to interact in a management system, right? Like Blackboard or Schoology
Or Canvas.
or Canvas. They need to know how to find assignments, upload assignments, contact their teachers, those kinds of things. All right, so sometimes people ask questions about the difference between a routine and a norm. They are very closely related. They are not mutually exclusive. Sometimes routines are norms. Again, we tend to think of it when the routine becomes internalized and kind of is carried with the students to different environments. That's when we say it's become a norm. So we might have different routines, the way that we do things in our class, but that idea of raising your hand in an online class or muting when you enter, those are more like norms that would be consistent across many different situations.
Exactly.
All right, so one of the discussion questions in the course, and one of the things that people really enjoy talking about when we do ACES trainings, is routines. So we're thinking about effective communication. Can anyone, we'd love to see some examples of routines that you might use with your learners to help them develop effective communication. So I will share one. I think Heather and I might have a similar example. In our program, we use Remind to communicate with students about updates, assignments. Similarly, if students want to ask me a question, the norm is for them to use Remind. And so that is usually written communication. And so that is a routine that I have created with my students. It's kind of program wide for us. And it's a way that my students can practice their communication skills when they ask me questions or respond to my announcements or questions using that app. Remind is an app.
Yeah, and you just make me think about students then in their mirror environment, if they want to be there and be more part of their child's school. Many schools also use Remind, and it is a way to help students then reply to their children's teachers and such. So it's that idea of that routine that developed into a norm, and then students can use it outside of their adult ed learning environment.
So what about you? Do you have any effective communication routines or routines that you think might help to build effective communication skills. We would love to see an example in the chat because we know you've got great ideas. And while we are waiting to get an example, we want to share with you where you could find some ACES routines. And it looks like, oops, let's see here. Keith shared a great routine from Skill 2. I really appreciate you are keeping up the practice of telling us the skill. Thank you for doing that, Keith. Skill 2, having students introduce themselves to others in their small group using language in a business context, right? You know, so maybe first and last names. Another routine that is very common now is using those pronouns, students, so that students get used to that and understand why it's done. Because most meetings I attend these days, that is the norm. Krista says, teaching on Zoom, we do a daily breakout room conversation. Then we also do some practice conversations each night with scripts. That's an excellent idea for a routine that also incorporates technology. That is fantastic.
And I love all of you sharing what you're doing in the classroom.
So if you are interested in finding out about more routines, we do have a small, but we'd love to grow it, collection of ACES routines that are housed. The link is housed on the Atlas website. Carly just shared that link in the chat. These are routines that have been submitted by colleagues. You can share your own routine and have that added to this collection. So that's a great place to look if you'd like to find out some other ideas for routines that build ACES skills.
And I say we adult educators, we're far too humble. We do really amazing things, and that includes you. So you can certainly submit. In the past, people were offered CEUs, and I think that still might be the case for submitting a routine.
Mm-hmm. I do believe one CEU is what we were giving before, and so maybe Carly or Patsy could let us know if that practice is continuing.
Yeah, so Keith or Krista, move on over and get more CEUs.
All right.
Let's take a closer look at another category, which is learning strategies. We are going to follow the similar format, although we might not have you be responding because of time, but now you get the idea about what you need to do within the course. It's very much similar to what we're doing here in our session today. So we're looking at Module 4, Learning Strategies. We'll look at the overview as well as the learning strategy skills. You can see this on pages 15 to 21 of your TIF. Yeah, I agree. Woohoo for all those CEUs, Krista. So here, again, we're not going to read the definition of learning strategies. This is an AI-generated image. I did not use Canva. I used ChatGPT, but we are using our technology skills to increase our big brains and learning strategies. I thought this was great. You can see all sorts of learning strategies, note-taking, mind mapping tools, summarizing, highlighting. All of these are strategies that our learners can really be taught, and then they can use within their classrooms. So, all right. So we'll move us forward here.
All right, so again, we're going to look at the 3 main skills from the learning strategies category. We've got skill 1, apply appropriate strategies for comprehending oral or written language in text and listening activities, such as reading schedules, listening to a supervisor's directions, listening to a lecture. Skill 2, apply appropriate strategies to organize, retain, and review materials in order to aid in understanding and recall. And skill 3 is articulate awareness of what helps one learn language and content, which I think is really important. In our program, we've just gone, we do trimesters, so we're at the end of Try 1. We've been doing conferencing with learners, and it's great when learners can tell me what they think is working for them and areas where they think they might need more support. because they've developed that awareness.
Yeah, and I will say, piggybacking off of that, I'm asking students pretty much every day or every other day, what was the best learning for them? And so often it's taking notes. They are able to articulate that. So it is proven. That's their learning strategy.
All right, and now again, we have some examples that we came up with to align with those 3 skills. Students select and use a graphic organizer that is appropriate for the task, such as a T-chart for pro-con or a Venn diagram for compare and contrast.
And of course, you would model how to use each of these graphic organizers.
Mhm. Students make use of background knowledge to make predictions before and during reading and listening activities and share their predictions in breakout rooms or small groups. And when conferencing on progress, as we just mentioned, students are able to articulate their strengths and areas for growth as a learner. I know a student just said to me, we were talking about a practice GED test score, and she said, you know, I think I just get too nervous and I have anxiety and I really need to try to relax. And so, you know, having that awareness is the first step in supporting her with some techniques to help her feel more confident next time she tests, right?
Sort of that metacognitive approach.
Yes. All right. So now, again, we just want to point out that there are learning strategy sample activities, just as there were for effective communication. So maybe some of you, again, if this is your first exposure to the full TIF, we really encourage you to look through this and mine it for some ideas that might work with your students. So this is page 15 in the complete TIF, and you can, of course, explore the sample activities when you have time.
And their complexity as well as the contexts.
Mm-hmm. Once again, I think we're going to skip this just because of time, but, you know, in the course, you would be thinking about one of those activities you'd like to use with your learners and explaining what tweaks you would make. If any of you superstars out there would like to share something just because you have an idea about a learning strategy activity that you're currently doing or one that you have tried in the past, we'd love to hear about that. So we'd love to have you share that in the chat. And then again, of course, the ACES process is the same. The reason we wanted to share this slide is we wanted to point out, do you see the orange like circle that looks kind of like a recycling sign? It's the circle that's completing on itself. This icon is used throughout the course when something has been previously introduced in an earlier module. So for example, if you started with effective communication and then you went into a second, another module, certain activities and videos will be repeated. But because you can begin with any module and move through the course, those 6 modules in any order, that's why we include them in each module. That does not mean you need to watch that ACES process video 6 times or, multiple times. You only need to watch it once. And this repeated and with that icon is to let you know this is something you've probably done before, or at least ask yourself, have I done this before? If so, I'm going to skip it this time.
Although I will say rereading or rewatching some of this is a learning strategy.
Sure. But, we might not want to
watch it.
Yeah, we might want to watch it many, many times, especially if we watched it the first time not too long ago. Okay, and again, about the TIF methods. So these remain the same. These are something that's repeated, another aspect that's repeated throughout the course.
Focusing on the difference between routines and norms and incorporating them.
Yes. So we're not going to share ideas again. However, if anyone has a routine that they want to put in the chat, we would love to see it. but we want to move on to talking about the final assessment, your final assignment, right? So for the assignment, you are meant to think of a student with whom you work. If you are not working with learners right now, that's okay. We do have a learner profile that we created and include in the course, and we'll show you that in just a moment. We actually would like you to do this as a little bit of homework before next time. And that way, if you do all 3 videos, you will complete this final assignment and have that ready to submit for your CEUs. I also know Carly's going to share with us, if you do all 3 of these webinars, you will get bonus CEUs for completing the series.
Woohoo.
Okay. So if you plan to join us again in 2 weeks on November 26th, we are asking you to complete part of this transition map. So our idea was to have you complete part of it for each webinar. So you could choose either effective communication or self-management as your TIF category 1. You'll think about the student and which of those might be more appropriate. You're going to identify the skills and sub-skills you think would be most helpful for your student to help them reach their goal. And then also a routine. So I know we moved quickly today. Maybe you couldn't think of a routine on the fly. You'll be able to share one next time. We will ask you to share out what you thought of when we have our next webinar. So again, we're asking you to do this as a between webinar task, but it will also help you if you're in your course to move towards completion.
Yeah, so we're hoping that by the end of the 3 webinar series, you'll have completed the course.
At least the final assignment piece.
Yes. And if you do not have a student right now in your course, we have Myra, who is a fictional and AI generated student here. We have a profile for you shared in the chat, and you could possibly focus on Myra and her needs.
Yes.
In the context of the TIF.
So I will say Myra's image is AI generated. The details about Myra are sort of a compilation of learners I have worked with over the years in adult ed. So it's talking about someone who's trying to balance life and work, someone who maybe needs to develop a few of her study skills, these types of things. So you can read Myra's profile and use that for your assignment if you would like to.
Thanks, Patsy. We liked using new techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make sure you can cross that finish line. Finish the course. That is your goal. And I know that's why many of you came here today. We have some suggestions on strategies you could employ to finish the course. You could set a deadline for completion, either with a calendar or that checklist with different milestones, different categories. One moment. Can you grab that for a second?
Heather is got a little frog in her throat. Yes. So again, one of the purposes for having this webinar series was to help people complete the course. So setting a calendar with milestones is one thing we could do. You could create a routine. Maybe decide every Monday or every Friday, I am going to spend, 30 minutes or 1 hour working on the course during this chunk of time. Make it a routine. One of the things that is powerful about routines is you don't have to think about it. It's something that you have to do, just like brushing your teeth, right? You don't have arguments with yourself about brushing your teeth. You just know you have to do it because it's part of your routine. Okay.
And also you could find what we call a study buddy. You saw in the chat some of your colleagues here who have enrolled in the course. Maybe you want to just reach out and say, hey, Heather, you're enrolled in the course. Can we just check in? And maybe that's through an email or a text, just to help and support each other. I know Carly would love to be a study buddy, and she can also help you with some of this. But we just want to give you some of our suggestions. If there are other strategies that you all have, please share in the chat. Maybe, I think it was Mandeep who finished the course. Maybe what did you do to get over that finish line?
I think one of the things that is, it's great to have these asynchronous courses where we work at our own pace. However, it does require a certain amount of discipline. We have to sort of self-police ourselves to get us to do it. And that can be challenging when we have so many other competing commitments and obligations. So, Carly's got a suggestion. Pair asynchronous Canvas learning with a small reward, like a nice beverage or listening to good music at the same time. That's
Wonderful.
a great idea. Or maybe you do a module from the course and you reward yourself by watching an episode of your favorite show or listening to an episode of your favorite podcast. Those are great rewards.
Or I'm thinking from all of you wanting an extra hour, maybe buying a book, buying that book that you want to read.
All right, great.
So we're going to wrap up in just a few minutes. If you have questions, feel free to ask in the chat or raise your hand. But otherwise, we also want to allow Carly and Patsy to step in and talk about some other activities that are happening around Atlas.
Yeah. And I would just love to say, if you have liked this webinar today and you think you'd like to see something similar for next time, it would be great to know that in the chat. If this was really not what you were expecting and you'd like something different, if you could maybe provide a little feedback around that, we'd love to know as we plan for the next webinar in 2 weeks.
I think we receive effective communication well, right?
Yes. All right. So yes, Patsy and Carly.
I'm coming. Hi, everyone. Thank you to Stephanie and Heather for sharing information about ACES TIF today. I shared an Atlas announcement link in the chat, which is a big collection of all of these different training options that are coming up. Some are in person, some are virtual. We do want to highlight that this is part of a series. So if this was a great time, a great day of the week, and you want to come back for the next two, we'll be here again on Tuesday, November 26th and Tuesday, December 10th. So it's every other Tuesday. And as Stephanie and Heather alluded to, I think it's maybe on the next slide, we're trying to give a little bit of an incentive for folks to attend all three. So these are an hour and a half long. People will earn 1.5 CEUs per webinar. But if you attend all three, we're going to throw in some extra CEUs. So that's the little carrot for you if you attend all of them. And in the next day or two, you will get a email from our Atlas events coordinator, and there will be an evaluation. We're going to hold off and send CEUs at the end of the three webinars because we want more people to join for all three and get you that higher number of CEUs.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that. And also thank you to Atlas for thinking about ways to support teachers needing those CEUs all around the state. So important.
All right. So we just want to say thank you. We know very well that your time is valuable. We know that we all have so many things that we need to focus on and so many hats that we wear. So thank you very much for joining us today. Again, okay, I see there's a question in the chat, which I will look at for in just a moment. We'll address that. Again, please fill out your evaluations, or you could even directly email Heather and I. We would love to know if there are things that you would like to see different for the next webinar. The webinars are optional, that's correct. And you get separate CEUs for completing the course as for doing the the webinar is a big part of the webinar is to create some community around the course because it can be isolating to do this work alone.
Carol, thank you. That is so great. And I feel that was maybe
Okay.
what you needed, that push to get over that finish line, right? And we're here to help you.
So Carol, yes, and I just want to say, Carol, as someone who used to facilitate the course, you are far from the only one who has ever enrolled and not completed. So a lot of people, you know, looked at it, maybe thought this is not the right time for me, or that it was confusing. So I'm glad that today's webinar helped with some of that to clarify it a bit. And you would need to re-enroll, mostly because if you did this over a year ago, you might have enrolled in Schoology. You want to make sure it was in Canvas. So Patsy said if it was after July 1st of this year, you'll need to wait. I think you mean if it was before, don't you, Patsy? If it was before July 1st of this year, you'll need to re-enroll. Oops, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
So if you have enrolled more recently in Canvas, and it looked like what you saw with the, you know, same screenshots we showed you at the beginning, you're probably good. However, I'm sure you could reach out to Carly and she could confirm your registration. And again, the link to the course is here. Okay.
Yeah, I think the big key is that it needs to have the FY25, fiscal year 25.
Yes. All right.
So thank you, friends.
Thank you so much, everybody.
See you in 2 weeks.
We hope to see you all back in 2 weeks. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Great work.
Yes, thank you, Heather and Stephanie, as always. Such good stuff. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.
So if we wanted to try to get a hold of evaluations fairly quickly,